They say you meet your soulmate in the strangest places. Coffee shops, bookstores, blind dates arranged by well-meaning friends. No one ever mentions meeting them while contemplating your own end. The river looked peaceful that night, almost inviting. The moon hung low and full, casting silver ribbons across the water's surface. Sera sat at the edge with her bare feet dangling in the current, feeling the cold bite against her skin. It was fitting, she thought. Everything in her life had been cold lately. 23 years old, and this was what it had come to. Sold. Like cattle. Like property. Her stepmother's voice still echoed in her head from 3 days ago. The Mad Alpha has agreed to pay handsomely for you. You should be grateful anyone wants damaged goods. The Mad Alpha. Even his name was a warning. The werewolf who went feral every full moon, who'd killed his own pack members in his madness, who desperately needed a mate to break his curse. And somehow, Sera had become the sacrificial lamb offered up to appease the monster. She'd run. Of course she'd run. Stolen away in the night with nothing but the clothes on her back and the overwhelming certainty that drowning was preferable to becoming some beast's property. The water called to her. Just lean forward. Let go. It would be over quickly. She closed her eyes and took a breath. If you're going to jump, a deep voice said from behind her, maybe we should do it together. Make it easier, you know? We could count to 3. Sera's eyes snapped open. She twisted around to find a man standing several feet away, half hidden in shadow. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Even in the darkness, she could make out the exhaustion etched into his features, the hollow look of someone who'd been walking with ghosts for far too long. Excuse me, she managed, her heart hammering. He moved closer, stepping into the moonlight. Handsome, she realized with an absurd flutter of awareness. Ruggedly so, with dark hair that fell messily across his forehead and a jaw that looked carved from stone. But it was his eyes that caught her, deep brown, rimmed with gold, and filled with a weariness that mirrored her own. The river, he said, gesturing to the water. You were about to jump, weren't you? I was planning the same thing. Thought maybe it would be less lonely if we did it together. Safety in numbers and all that. For a moment, Sera could only stare. Then, despite everything, despite the darkness pressing down on her chest and the hopelessness that had driven her here, she felt the corner of her mouth twitch. Are you seriously trying to make this a group activity? Is that inappropriate? He tilted his head, considering. I'm not great with social cues lately. You think? She pulled her feet from the water and turned to face him fully. Who even are you? Does it matter? He moved to sit beside her, maintaining a careful distance. I'm someone who wants to end things. You're someone who wants to end things. We have that in common. That's more than most people can say on a first meeting. There was a beat of silence. Then he said, ladies first. She blinked. What? You were here first. You should jump first. I'll go after. That's no. If anyone's jumping first, it should be you. His eyebrows rose. Why should I go first? Because I was here first. Which means I have the right to decide. That makes absolutely no sense. It makes perfect sense. Sera could feel a hysterical laugh building in her chest. I found this spot. I sat here contemplating everything. You just showed up and tried to crash my moment. Crash your... I'm not crashing anything. I'm offering moral support. I don't want moral support. I want... She stopped, the absurdity of the argument hitting her. Wait. Should we be counting on 3 or after 3? What's the difference? A lot, actually. On 3 means we jump as we say 3. After 3 means we jump after we finish saying it. He stared at her. Are you seriously arguing semantics right now? You're the one who suggested counting to 3. They both stopped. Looked at each other. Then, simultaneously, they seemed to deflate. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Completely ridiculous, she agreed. They sat in silence for a moment, the river flowing past, indifferent to their crisis. So, he said finally, are you actually going to jump? Sera looked at the water. Looked at the stranger beside her. I don't know anymore. Are you? I don't know either. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving it even more disheveled. Seemed like a good idea 5 minutes ago. Now it just seems sad. It is sad. Very sad. Another stretch of silence. A night bird called in the distance. Why do you want to? Sera asked quietly. If you don't mind me asking. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, does it matter? Why do you? Fair point. Sera hugged her knees to her chest, suddenly feeling very small. I'm running from something. Someone, actually. My stepmother sold me. Like I was property. To a monster. His voice remained carefully neutral. What kind of monster? The Mad Alpha. Do you know who that is? I've heard of him, he said slowly. Then you know what he is. What he does. Every full moon, he goes feral. Kills without control. My stepmother sold me to him for gold, and when I found out, her voice broke. I'd rather drown than become that creature's property. You're worth more than gold, he said quietly, and something in his voice made her look at him. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. You don't even know me. I know you're sitting here instead of begging that woman to keep you. That takes courage. He met her eyes, and for a moment, something flickered there, something intense and unreadable. Then it was gone. What if we made a deal? A deal? Neither of us jumps. Not tonight. We give it 10 days. Really try to live. Try to survive. If we still want to end things after that, we come back here together. Sera studied him, this strange man offering her an extension on a death sentence. Why would you do that? You don't know me. I don't even know your name. Dante, he said. And you're right, I don't know you. But I'm tired of being alone in the dark. Maybe we could be alone together for a while. See if living gets any better. And if it doesn't? Then in 10 days, we come back here. Together or not at all. Something about those words resonated deep in her chest. Together or not at all. She'd been alone her entire life, ignored by her father, tortured by her stepmother, friendless in a house that treated her like a servant. The idea of not being alone, even in something as dark as this. Okay, she whispered. 10 days. 10 days, Dante said, his hand solid and warm around hers. We survived together. They sat there for another moment, two broken souls making a pact at the river's edge. Then Dante stood, offering to help her up. So, Sera said, suddenly awkward now that the moment had passed. Now what? I guess we survive? Dante looked equally uncertain. I don't know how to do that. Me neither. He looked around at the dark forest. But I have a place. Well, I'm building a place. It's not much, barely 4 walls and a roof that leaks. But it's shelter. You could stay. Until you figure things out. Every instinct Sera had been taught screamed that she shouldn't trust a strange man offering her shelter. But those same instincts had led her to a river's edge ready to drown. Maybe it was time to stop trusting her instincts. Okay, she said. Show me. They walked through the forest in silence, Sera very aware of the dried blood on her palm and the strange man leading her deeper into the woods. The cabin, if it could be called that, was exactly as he'd described. For walls that looked ready to collapse, a roof that was more holes than shingles, and absolutely no furniture. It's perfect, Sera said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Dante gave her a crooked smile that transformed his entire face. Liar. It's got 4 walls and a door. That's more than I had an hour ago. They spent the rest of the night in awkward silence, claiming opposite corners of the single room and trying not to think about the fact that they'd nearly ended their lives together and were now essentially roommates. As dawn broke through the holes in the roof, Sera found herself studying the man sleeping across from her, this stranger named Dante who'd offered her 10 days when she'd been ready to let go of everything. She didn't know what the next 10 days would bring. But for the first time in years, she found herself wanting to find out. The first disaster happened on day 2. Sera woke to the sound of crashing and a string of cursing that would have made her stepmother reach for the soap. She sat up to find half the roof had collapsed during the night, burying Dante in a pile of rotted wood and leaves. Are you okay? She called, trying desperately not to laugh. A hand emerged from the debris, followed by Dante's head, bits of leaves stuck in his hair. He glared at a support beam. The wood was rotted. I should have checked before. Are you smiling? I'm not, Sera said, definitely smiling. You absolutely are. I'm just thinking that maybe we're terrible at this whole surviving thing. We're 1 day in. He kicked at the fallen beam. Give us some credit. The roof fell on your head while you were sleeping. It's called dramatic irony. Very literary. This time Sera did laugh, and the sound surprised them both. When was the last time she'd laughed? Months? Years? They spent the next few hours rebuilding and learning more about each other, and Sera discovered that while Dante was surprisingly good at hunting and tracking, his carpentry skills left much to be desired. She wasn't much better. Her stepmother had never taught her practical skills, preferring to keep her locked away doing needlework and pretending to be invisible. No, you can't just nail them together randomly, Sera said, watching Dante attempt to build a window frame. Why not? It's wood. Nails go in wood. Basic physics. Because there's a technique. You have to measure, make sure the angles are right otherwise. The frame collapsed with a spectacular crash. They stared at it in silence. Otherwise that happens, Sera finished weakly. Dante started laughing, a deep, genuine sound that made something in Sera's chest warm. Before she knew it, she was laughing too, and suddenly they were both sitting in the dirt, surrounded by broken wood and bent nails, laughing until tears streamed down their faces. We're going to die out here, Dante gasped between laughs. Not from the river, but from being crushed by our own terrible construction. At least it'll make an interesting story, Sera managed. The day began to fall into a rhythm after that drama. They continue working on the cabin until they were exhausted, eat what they'd managed to hunt, and gather the night before. They collapse into their respective corners to take a quick nap after the stressful day. They didn't talk much about their pasts. That was an unspoken rule between them. The present was hard enough without dragging ghosts into it. But they were able to find out small things about themselves. Dante was a terrible cook but an excellent hunter. Sera could identify every edible plant in the forest, but couldn't hit a target if her life depended on it. He was a morning person who woke with the sun. She came alive under the stars. He was neat and organized. She left her things scattered everywhere. Their first real meal that day was in the night after their quick nap, something that wasn't burnt or raw or mysteriously both. Sera had found wild onions, mushrooms, and some herbs she recognized. Dante had caught a rabbit. Together, working in comfortable silence, they managed to create something that actually resembled stew. They ate without speaking, both somewhat shocked that the food was actually edible. This is good, Dante said finally, sounding surprised. Don't sound so amazed. We didn't poison ourselves. That's worth celebrating. The bar is incredibly low for us. And yet we keep tripping over it. Sera snorted into her bowl, and Dante grinned at her, and she realized with a small jolt that she was happy. Or something close to happy. Content, maybe. Not actively wishing for death, definitely. The moment that changed everything happened earlier while Dante was trying to catch fish. Sera was gathering water when she heard a splash and a yelp. She looked up to see Dante had somehow managed to fall into the river fully clothed, arms windmilling as he tried to catch his balance. He went under with a spectacular splash, then surfaced sputtering and cursing, completely soaked. Sera laughed. She couldn't help it, a genuine, free laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. It felt rusty, like a skill she'd forgotten she possessed. Dante froze in the water, dripping and bedraggled, staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, her laughter fading, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing. He smiled, slow and warm. That's a good sound. I needed to hear that sound. Something fluttered in Sera's chest. When did his smile become her favorite thing? That evening, as they sat by the fire drying his clothes after dinner, Sera realized something profound. I haven't thought about the river today. Dante looked at her, the firelight casting shadows across his face. Me neither. The next morning, Sera was gathering kindling when she saw something that made her blood run cold. Massive paw prints in the soft earth, far too large to belong to any normal wolf. She followed them with her eyes and saw more. Disturbed undergrowth, claw marks on trees, signs of something big moving through their territory. She was so focused on the tracks that she didn't notice Dante had returned until he spoke. Find something interesting? Sera jumped, her heart racing. There's something out there. Something big. Like a wolf. She pointed to the tracks. Are you scared of shifters? You know they don't hurt anyone unless they're rogues, right? Dante's expression became carefully neutral. Why do you ask? These tracks. They're from a wolf, but no normal wolf is this size. She wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know much about shifters, but I think I prefer my kind to them. Even though we live in a world where we coexist, I still don't believe they're quite human. Shifters are good people, Dante said with surprising conviction. Why do you sound so sure? Sera studied him. I hope you're not a shifter yourself. She tried to laugh, to make it a joke, but it came out uncertain. I know quite a lot of them, Dante said carefully. Enough to know for sure they're not monsters. Something in his tone made Sera look at him more closely, but before she could press further, he changed the subject, asking her to help him with the cabin repairs. That night, lying in her corner, Sera couldn't shake the feeling that Dante talked so high of shifters. Day 2 brought a comfortable domesticity that surprised them both. In the morning, they developed routines between themselves without writing them down. He would hunt in the mornings while she gathered edible plants and herbs. They'd cook together in the afternoons. Evenings were for repairs and quiet conversation. You're doing it wrong, Dante said, watching Sera stir the soup they were making. There's a wrong way to stir soup? She didn't look up from the pot. Apparently, because you found it. I found it. Sera flicked broth at him with the wooden spoon. You're the one who almost set water on fire yesterday. That was a scientific anomaly. It was you not watching the pot. They bickered like this constantly since yesterday, and Sera found she loved it. It felt normal. Safe. Real. That evening, as the fire burned low, Sera found herself opening up in ways she never had before. My stepmother used to lock me in the cellar for days, she said quietly, staring into the flames. If I spoke at dinner, if I looked at her wrong, sometimes just because she felt like it. She pulled her knees to her chest. She'd tell my father I was sick. He believed her. Or maybe he just didn't care enough to check. Dante was silent beside her, but she could feel the tension radiating from him. When she finally looked over, his jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists. She doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm here now. She can't hurt me. If she ever tries, she'll have to go through me first. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made Sera's heart skip. She studied his profile in the firelight, the strong jaw, the shadows under his eyes, the way he looked like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. What about you? She asked softly. Why were you at the river? Dante was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'm no good for anyone. Not even my own family. That's not true. You don't know that. We've only spent 2 days together. And I know you're good to me, Sera said firmly. That's enough. The look he gave her was full of such longing and pain that it took her breath away. But before she could say anything else, he stood abruptly. We should sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. We need to fix the east wall before it collapses like the roof. And just like that, the moment was over. But Sera lay awake long after Dante's breathing had evened out into sleep, wondering what demons haunted the man who'd saved her from her own darkness. Day 3 brought new terrors. Sera woke to find massive paw prints right outside their door. Then she discovered a freshly killed deer on their doorstep, still warm, its throat torn out cleanly. Throughout the day, she had felt like she saw eyes watching them from the forest, a presence that made her skin crawl with awareness. That night, she saw them. Glowing amber eyes in the darkness, watching from the tree line. The eyes were too high up to belong to any normal animal. Dante, she called out, panic rising in her throat. Dante, where are you? She searched frantically around the cabin, her heart pounding. Where was he? He'd said he was getting more wood for pillars in case of rain, but that had been an hour ago. The eyes moved closer. Sera grabbed the knife Dante had given her, holding it with shaking hands, and just like that the wolf ran into the forest. Dante, I'm here. His voice came from behind her, calm and steady. She spun to find him emerging from the forest, arms full of wood. What's wrong? There's a wolf. She pointed with her knife toward the eyes, but they'd vanished. It was right there. I saw it. Glowing eyes, massive, stalking us. Dante set down the wood, his expression oddly calm. It won't hurt you. I promise. You keep saying that. Frustration and fear made her voice sharp. How do you know that for sure? I just do. He moved toward her slowly, like approaching a spooked animal. Why are you so scared of them anyway? Shifters live alongside humans. We've coexisted for generations. Sera was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, my stepmother is one. A shifter. She killed my father, but she didn't know I saw her. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I watched her shift. Watched her tear him apart because he'd discovered her affair. To stay alive, I kept quiet and lived in the shadows. Pretended I'd seen nothing. Pretended I was nothing. Sera. Dante's voice was rough with emotion. In 2 strides, he crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. I'm so sorry. But not all shifters are like her. Most of them are good creatures. How can you know that? Trust me. Please. She wanted to ask more, to press him on the topic, but his arms were warm and solid around her, and she was so tired of being afraid. That evening, they sat by the fire, and Sera found herself mending his shirt while he carved something from wood, a habit she'd noticed but never questioned. She caught him staring at her with an expression that made her breath catch. What? She asked. Long pause. Nothing. You just look peaceful. I'm mending your shirt. It's not exactly exciting. No, I mean. He set down his carving. You look like you belong here. Like you're home. Sera's hands stilled on the fabric. I haven't had a home in a long time. Neither have I. He was closer now, though she hadn't noticed him move. But this, with you, it feels like it could be. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. This is bad, she thought. This is so bad. She was falling for her pact buddy, the man she'd met while planning to end everything, and she had no idea how to stop it. She didn't think she wanted to stop it. Day 5 started like any other. Dante left early to check his hunting traps. Sera stayed behind, humming to herself while organizing the herbs they'd gathered. She'd been thinking about asking Dante about the almost kiss from the night before. About what it meant. About where this was going between them. She never got the chance. The door exploded inward with a crash that made Sera scream. 3 rough men filled the doorway, armed, dangerous, and wearing expressions that made her blood freeze. The leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, held up a piece of paper with her face on it. Well, well, he said, grinning. The runaway thief. Sera's eyes locked on the poster. Wanted, Sera Ashwood. Theft and fraud. 500 gold reward. I didn't, she started, but she knew it was useless. Her stepmother had planned everything. Save it for the magistrate, the leader said, moving toward her. That's 500 gold walking around, boys. Let's collect our prize. Sera didn't think. She gripped everything she could lay her hands on, throwing them at the nearest man, and ran out the back of the cabin into the forest. Behind her, she heard crashes and curses as they tore through the cabin. Her home. The first place she'd felt safe in years. They were destroying it. She ran blindly, branches whipping her face, terror giving her speed she didn't know she possessed. But they were faster, experienced hunters who knew these woods. She could hear them gaining on her, shouting to each other, coordinating their pursuit like a wolf pack. Come out, little thief. Make this easy. Sera ducked into a hollow tree, pressing herself as far back as she could go, trying to control her ragged breathing. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure they could hear it. Footsteps all around her hiding spot. Getting closer. Any second now, they'd look inside and... A roar split the air. Not a human sound. Something primal, filled with rage and protective fury. The footsteps stopped. Someone screamed. Then there were sounds of fighting, snarls, thuds, men crying out in pain and terror. Sera huddled in her tree, shaking, as chaos erupted outside. The sounds of fighting went on for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When silence finally fell, she waited, terrified of what she'd find if she emerged. Sera. Dante's voice, rough and strained. It's safe. Come out. She crawled out of the hollow tree on shaking legs to find Dante standing in a small clearing, breathing hard. The three men were gone, fled, by the look of the broken branches and scattered weapons. Dante was bleeding from a cut on his arm, his clothes torn, but his eyes were what caught her attention. They were glowing bright amber, like the eyes she'd seen in the forest. "You're hurt," she managed. "I'm fine." He was at her side in an instant, hands running over her arms, her face, checking for injuries. "Did they hurt you? Did they touch you?" She shook her head, and suddenly she was crying great, heaving sobs she couldn't control. Dante pulled her against his chest, his arms like iron bands around her. "They'll never stop," she choked out against his shirt. "My stepmother will keep sending people. I'll never be free. Then we make sure they can't find you." His voice was fierce, his arms tightening protectively. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Do you understand? No one." She pulled back enough to look at him, seeing the intensity in his face, the way his hands trembled slightly as he held her. "Why? Why do you care so much?" He stared at her like the answer was obvious, like he couldn't believe she had to ask. But instead of answering, he just said, "Come on. We need to move. This place isn't safe anymore." The cabin was a disaster. They'd stolen supplies, broken furniture, torn apart everything looking for valuables or clues to where Sera might have hidden gold. She stood in the middle of the destruction and felt something shift inside her. She'd spent her whole life running, hiding, letting people hurt her because she didn't think she was worth fighting for. "Teach me," she said suddenly, her voice hard. Dante looked up from where he was examining the broken door. "Teach you what?" "To fight. Really fight. Not just defend myself, but how to hurt someone who's trying to hurt me." Her hands clenched into fists. "I'm done being helpless. I'm done running. I want to be able to protect myself." Something flickered across Dante's face, pride, maybe, or approval. "Okay, but I won't go easy on you. I don't want you to." They moved their camp farther into the forest, to a more defensible position. And then the real training began. Dante was ruthless, pushing her past exhaustion, making her repeat moves until her muscles screamed and her hands bled from gripping weapons. "Hit me," he commanded during their first real session. "I'm not going to hit you. Sera. Hit me." She punched weakly at his shoulder. He looked at her with flat disappointment. "Did you just pat me? You gave me the gentlest tap I've ever received." "Again. Like you mean it this time." "I'm trying. Try harder." His voice was sharp. "Imagine I'm one of those men from today. Imagine I'm your stepmother. Imagine I'm everyone who ever made you feel weak and helpless." She swung again, putting real force behind it this time. He blocked easily, but nodded with approval. "Better." Again. They trained until Sera was drenched in sweat and her arms felt like lead. Dante was relentless, catching every mistake, pushing her to be faster, stronger, smarter. "I hate you," she panted after he'd thrown her to the ground for the 5th time. "Good. Use that anger." He offered his hand to help her up. "Anger makes you sloppy, but it also makes you fight harder. Learn to control it, and you'll be dangerous." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one getting thrown around. Want me to let you win? I want you to teach me how to actually win." He smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually guarded face. "That's my girl." The endearment slipped out so naturally that they both froze. Dante cleared his throat awkwardly. "Again," he said gruffly. "And this time, watch my left side. I favor it when I'm tired." The days blurred together after that. Train, fortify their new camp, train some more. They set up traps for unwanted visitors, created multiple escape routes, turned their new shelter into something more like a fortress than a home. But there were moments, small, quiet moments between the intensity, where something else grew. His hand lingering on her waist when he corrected her stance. The way she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. The increasingly frequent times when they'd be sparring and suddenly they were too close, breathing too hard, staring at each other like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. And always, always the wolf. That night, Sera saw it again. The massive creature with silver-black fur and glowing amber eyes. It was sitting at the edge of their camp, watching. Not threatening. Almost protective. She should have been terrified. Instead, she found herself walking toward it, drawn by something she couldn't name. "Who are you?" she whispered. The wolf's ears perked forward. It huffed, almost like a laugh, and then melted back into the shadows. Day 6 brought a different kind of tension. After an intense training session, both of them were breathing hard, covered in sweat and dirt. Sera had actually managed to get Dante on his back this time, a victory she was absurdly proud of. "You're getting better," he said, looking up at her with something like pride in his eyes. "I have a good teacher." That look again. The one that made her stomach flip and her breath catch. He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek. "Sera," he said softly, "I need to tell you something. About me." About? Crash. Something large moving through the underbrush nearby. Dante was on his feet in an instant, all warrior now, the moment shattered. "Stay here. Don't open the door no matter what you hear." "What?" Dante. But he was already gone, disappearing into the forest with that unnatural speed. Sera waited inside, knife in hand, heart pounding. She could hear voices outside, Dante's and someone else's. The other voice was deep, commanding, and spoke in a language she didn't understand. It sounded ancient, guttural. When Dante returned 20 minutes later, he looked shaken. "What was that?" Sera demanded. "Who is that?" "A wolf. From the Silver Pine Pack." He ran a hand through his hair. "We're on their territory. I didn't realize we'd crossed the boundary when we moved camp." "What does that mean?" "It means we need to be careful. I explained that we're just passing through, that we're human and you're under my protection. He said we can stay for now, but we need to keep a low profile." "Protection?" Sera studied his face. "Dante, why was that wolf talking to you? How could you even understand him?" "It's complicated. Try me." He looked at her for a long moment, clearly wrestling with something. "Not yet. I will tell you everything, Sera. I promise. Just, not yet." She wanted to push, to demand answers. But the pain in his eyes stopped her. Whatever he was hiding, it was tearing him apart to keep it from her. "Okay," she said quietly. "But soon, Dante. I need to know soon." That night, as they lay in their separate corners of their makeshift shelter, Sera counted the days. 7. They'd been together 7 days. Only 3 more until their pact was complete. She realized with startling clarity that she didn't want the 10 days to end. Didn't want to go back to that river. Didn't want to lose this, whatever this was with Dante. She was in love with him. Completely, irrevocably in love with the mysterious man who'd saved her in more ways than one. And that terrified her more than any bounty hunter ever could. Day 7 dawned with a sense of foreboding that Sera couldn't shake. She was fetching water from the nearby stream when she felt it, the weight of someone watching. She turned to find a man standing at the edge of the clearing. Tall, dark-haired, impeccably dressed despite the forest setting, with eyes that flashed amber and made every instinct in her body scream danger. "Well, hello there," he said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as deadly. "You must be Dante's friend." The way he said friend made it sound like an insult. Sera's hand went instinctively to the knife at her belt. Dante had made her promise to always carry it. "Who are you?" she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Where are my manners?" He smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "I'm Draven. An old acquaintance of Dante's. Is he around?" Everything about this man set Sera's teeth on edge. She backed toward the camp. "Dante. Someone's here." Dante emerged from the shelter, and the change in him was instantaneous and dramatic. His entire body went rigid, his expression shifting from concern to something dark and dangerous. She'd never seen him like this, radiating threat and authority like a physical force. "Draven." He said the name like a curse, moving to place himself between Sera and the stranger. "Leave. Now." Draven's smile widened. "Is that any way to greet an old friend?" "Go inside," Dante commanded Sera without taking his eyes off Draven. His voice held an edge of command she'd never heard before. Sera wanted to refuse, but something in his tone made her obey. She went into the shelter, but immediately moved to a gap in the walls where she could hear their conversation. "Let's talk." "Alone," Draven said. What Sera heard next made her blood turn to ice. "Playing house with a human?" Draven's voice dripped with mockery. "How domestic. Does she know you're not her kind?" "She doesn't need to know." Dante's voice was low, dangerous. "Does she know more than your name?" "Oh, don't tell me she doesn't. Leave her out of this." "Or what? You can barely control your wolf anymore. I could take your little human." The word wolf echoed in Sera's mind. She pressed her hand to her mouth to stop from crying out. Dante snapped. The fight that erupted was nothing human. They moved too fast, blurring together, hitting with enough force to crack trees. Sera watched through the gap, terrified and confused. What were they? Sera ran through the back door. Howls erupted in the distance, more wolves coming. Draven had brought reinforcements. Sera didn't think. She ran. The forest was a blur around her. She could hear them pursuing multiple wolves, their howls echoing through the trees. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but terror gave her speed. "What's happening?" she sobbed as she ran. "He told me he was human." She ran until she couldn't run anymore, until she found a small cave and collapsed inside, shaking and crying and completely lost. Dante wasn't human. He was a shifter. Everything had been a lie. She must have cried herself to sleep because she woke to pale morning light and a familiar presence. Dante sat at the mouth of the cave in human form, keeping watch. He looked exhausted, covered in cuts and bruises that were already healing. "Don't," she said when he reached for her. Her voice was hoarse. "Don't touch me. Sera, please. Let me explain." "Explain what? That you're a shifter? That you lied to me every single day?" She stood, wrapping her arms around herself. "Were you laughing at me this whole time? The stupid human girl who thought you actually cared?" "I never laughed at you. And I do care more than you know. I can't trust anything you say." She was shaking, whether from cold or shock or betrayal, she didn't know. "You let me tell you about my stepmother, about my fear of shifters, and you never said a word. You let me fall for you, knowing." "I was scared," he said desperately. "If you knew what I was, you would have run. You would have hated me. And I couldn't, I needed you to know me first. So you lied instead. I was trying to protect you." "From what? From yourself?" She laughed bitterly. "We should just survive these last few days separately. After that, we'll go our own ways." The pain that flashed across his face was so raw it almost made her take it back. "Almost. If that's what you want," he said quietly. "But let me at least get you somewhere safe first. Please, Sera. Let me do that much." She didn't have the strength to argue. "Fine. But after that, we're done." Day 8 and 9 blurred together in a haze of travel and awkward silence. Dante led them deeper into the forest, to territory far from where they'd been. When the distance became too great for Sera to walk, he stopped and turned to her. "I need to shift," he said. "We need to cover more ground, and you're exhausted. Will you ride on my back? You want me to ride you like a horse?" Despite everything, the absurdity of it made her want to laugh. "I know you're angry. I know you don't trust me. But I need to get you somewhere safe, and this is the fastest way." Sera looked at him, really looked at him. He was covered in healing wounds from fighting off Draven and his wolves. His eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. And despite the lies, despite everything, he was still trying to protect her. "I don't have much choice, do I?" she said quietly. He shifted, and even though she'd suspected, seeing it was different. One moment there was a man, the next a massive wolf with dark fur and those familiar amber eyes. He was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Sera climbed onto his back, gripping his fur, and he took off through the forest at a speed that stole her breath. They arrived in Silver Pine territory by nightfall. Dante shifted back and immediately started explaining. "We need to stay hidden here. Pretend to be normal. Just travelers passing through." "Human, you mean?" Sera couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "Well, that's easy for me. Speak for yourself." They built another cabin, smaller this time, with only one room. Neither of them acknowledged the sleeping arrangements until nightfall. "So we're just going to sleep in the same room?" Sera asked awkwardly. Unless you want to sleep with the actual bears out there. One room is fine. They hung a divider curtain for privacy, but neither of them slept well. Sera was too aware of his presence just feet away, of the things left unsaid between them. The next morning, Dante dropped his bombshell. If anyone asks, you're my wife. Sera choked on her water. You're what? Married couple. Homesteaders. Passing through. His expression was serious. It's the safest cover. A lone human woman would raise questions. A married couple is unremarkable. You want me to pretend to be married to you? Can you do that? Yeah. Sure. Wife. Great. Internal screaming. They went into the nearest settlement for supplies, and Dante committed to the role completely. He held her hand, his palm warm and solid against hers. He called her love and darling and sweetheart in a voice that sounded so genuine it made her chest ache. Newlyweds, the shopkeeper asked with a knowing smile. Is it that obvious? Dante said smoothly, pulling Sera closer. He's just very affectionate, Sera managed, her heart racing. On the way back, they encountered a patrol, 3 wolves in human form, clearly assessing the newcomers. Who are you? The leader demanded. Dante pulled Sera close, his hand possessive on her waist. Just passing through. Gathering herbs for my wife's tea. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, soft, protective, achingly tender. Sera was melting. Even knowing it was an act, even still angry and hurt, her traitorous body responded to his touch. The patrol let them pass. Back at their cabin, they stood in awkward silence. Neither of them acknowledged that it had felt too real. That for those moments in town, they hadn't been acting at all. Day 10 arrived with dark clouds and the promise of rain. By afternoon, the storm hit, violent and unrelenting. The cabin leaked, then flooded. Within an hour, there was only one dry corner and one blanket between them. We'll have to share, Dante said quietly. For warmth and to stay dry. Sera wanted to refuse. Wanted to maintain the wall she'd built between them. But she was cold and soaked and exhausted from days of emotional turmoil. Fine, she said. They huddled together in the corner, the blanket wrapped around both of them. The forced proximity brought back all the tension that had been building between them since that first day at the river. Today is day 10, Sera said quietly. We're supposed to have decided by now. About the river. The circumstances have changed, Dante said. Let's just stay here for a few more days. Make the right decision. Why are you really running? The question burst from her. Men like you, Wolf, you don't run. You fight. Dante was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'm not running from the fight. I'm running from what I might do if I stay. What does that mean? It means you should be afraid of me. But you're not. And that terrifies me more than anything else in my life. I was ready to end everything at that river, Sera whispered. Me too. But then you sat next to me, and everything changed. Lightning struck close by, illuminating the cabin. In that flash of light, Sera saw Dante's eyes, glowing gold, fully wolf, fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. Dante, your eyes. He pulled away abruptly. I need to check the perimeter. I need to make sure we're secure. He was already moving toward the door. Stay here. Stay warm. And then he was gone, fleeing into the storm like the coward he'd called himself, leaving Sera alone in the darkness. She sat there, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and finally let herself acknowledge the truth she'd been fighting since that day by the river. All along, he's been a wolf, she whispered to the empty room. And I still love him. Day 11 dawned clear and bright, as if the storm had washed the world clean. Dante returned at sunrise, soaked and shivering. Sera, despite her anger and confusion, immediately set about building up the fire and making him tea. Old habits, she told herself. Just basic human decency. But as the days passed, the pretend marriage stopped feeling quite so pretend. They fell into domestic routines that felt natural, comfortable. Cooking together, laughing at shared jokes, existing in a companionship that was both more and less than what Sera wanted. You're a terrible cook, Dante said in the evening, watching her attempt to make bread. You're a terrible liar. You love my cooking. I love. He stopped abruptly, his eyes widening. I mean, your cooking is tolerable. Sera's heart stuttered. Smooth, Dante. Real smooth. The moment hung between them, heavy with things unsaid. She was shocked to realize that nothing had fundamentally changed between them even after discovering his true nature. She still laughed at his jokes. Still felt safe in his presence. Still wanted him with an intensity that frightened her. And she hated herself for it. Hated that she couldn't just stop loving him because he'd lied. That evening, Dante challenged her to a dancing competition. Whoever lost had to do all the chores for a week. There was no music, just him humming off-key while they swayed together in the small cabin. Sera found herself relaxing into his arms, her head resting against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. This felt right. Despite everything, being in his arms felt like coming home. She must have dozed off because she woke to find herself by the fire, a blanket tucked around her, Dante sitting nearby keeping watch. She pretended to sleep and watched him through her lashes. The longing on his face, the ache of wanting something he thought he couldn't have, it mirrored everything she felt. Later, she was patching a wound on his arm from some fight with rogues he downplayed. Her fingers were gentle on his skin, and she felt him tense under her touch. "You're always getting hurt protecting me," she said quietly. "I'd do it 1,000 times over." "Why?" He turned his head, catching her hand in his, bringing it to his lips. "You know why, Sera." The world narrowed to just the two of them. Just this moment. He cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "May I?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. The kiss was everything she'd imagined and more, desperate, passionate, days of longing finally breaking free. She melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He responded with a growl that was more wolf than man, his arms banding around her. Then his eyes flashed gold, bright and glowing, and he ripped himself away from her. "I can't, I have to go." "Dante, wait." But he was already gone, leaving her standing there with her lips swollen and her heart in pieces. The next morning, she woke to find him packing his few belongings. "What are you doing?" She stood, wrapping the blanket around herself. "Breaking the pact. You should stay here. You've found a life in this territory. You'll be safe. You don't get to decide that. What if I still want to end things?" His voice was hollow. "What if these days haven't changed anything for me? Then why are you leaving?" She grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "We planned to do that together. That was the deal, together or not at all. Because I'll ruin you." The words burst from him. "You don't like wolves. You fear them because of what your stepmother did. And I'm a wolf and can't change that." "What are you talking about? Why do you even care if I go?" "Because I love you, you idiot." The words echoed in the small cabin. Silence crashed down around them. The world stopped turning. Sera was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. "I love you, and you won't even tell me the whole truth. You won't trust me with who you really are. You're not just some random human I met at a river." Dante's voice was raw. I'm what?" "Nothing. Forget it. I have to leave." She grabbed his arm with both hands now. "No. Together or not at all. Remember? That was our deal. I don't want to force you to stay with a shifter. You're not forcing me." She pulled him down until they were eye to eye. "I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. Even though you're a wolf. Even though you lied. So stop trying to protect me from yourself and just stay." Something broke in Dante's expression. With a sound between a growl and a sob, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her like a man drowning. This time, when his eyes flashed gold, he didn't pull away. That night, they showed each other without words what they'd been too afraid to say, hands mapping skin, mouths speaking truths that had been hidden too long, bodies joining in a way that felt inevitable, like the tide meeting the shore. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they fell asleep tangled together, finally at peace. Day 12 was amazing. They didn't talk much, just glancing with each other with admiration. They spent most of the day gisting and fetching what to eat in the night. When they got back to the cabin in the evening, they quickly take a nap before their usual time to make dinner. Sera woke to Dante already on his feet, tense and alert. "Get dressed. Quickly." "What's happening?" "My pack. They found us." "So?" she questioned. "This is not time for questions. Within minutes, the cabin was surrounded. Wolves in human form, at least a dozen of them, all armed, all looking dangerous. But it was the woman who stepped forward that caught Sera's attention. Alpha Dante, she said with a mixture of relief and reproach. We found you. Sera looked at Dante, really seeing him now in this context. The way the others stood at attention. The deference in their postures. The authority that radiated from him even when he was trying to hide it. Alpha, she breathed. He couldn't meet her eyes. You must be Lady Sera. The one who can break the curse. One of them said. What are you talking about? You're his destined mate. He's been searching for you his entire life. Dante Beta responded. The words hit Sera like a physical blow. She turned to Dante, feeling the betrayal cut deep. This whole time, everything was a lie. No. Dante moved toward her desperately. What we had was real. Every moment, every conversation, You're the mad alpha. She backed away from him. The one I was running from. The one my stepmother sold me to. This whole time you knew and you. Let me explain. Please. But the beta was already speaking, laying out the truth Sera wasn't ready to hear. The alpha was cursed as a child by the formal Luna because she was angry she couldn't give the alpha an heir. When the alpha took another mate and she gave birth to an heir, she placed a curse on him. And only solution is till he found his true mate. We found out you're our alpha mate. We contacted your stepmother weeks ago. She agreed to offer you as a potential mate for our alpha, for a price. Alpha Dante paid that price, and went to claim you. But you're gone.
Sera whispered.
I ran, and you found me at the river. I wasn't there by accident. Dante's voice was hollow. I tracked you. I felt you leave my territory. I followed you to that river, planning to tell you everything, to explain about the mate bond and the curse. But then I saw you sitting there, ready to end your life, terrified of the mad alpha. He ran a hand through his hair. I couldn't tell you. So I made the deal. 10 days. I thought if I could just get you to know me first to see that I wasn't a monster, then maybe I'd accept being sold to you? Sera's voice broke. Did you think I was so desperate that 10 days of kindness would make me forget I never had a choice? It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Dante? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you manipulated a vulnerable woman into falling in love with her purchaser. I fell in love with you. The words tore from him. That first night at the river, when you argued with me about who should jump first, when you laughed at the absurdity of it all, that's when I started falling. Every day after, watching you burn soup and blame the fire, listening to you hum while you worked, seeing you stand up to me during training, I fell more in love with you. The woman you are, not just the mate bond. How can I believe anything you say? Sera was crying now, unable to stop. How do I know any of it was real? Before Dante could answer, a sound made everyone freeze. A low growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The full moon was rising, visible through the trees, huge and silver and inevitable. Dante's eyes widened with horror.
No.
Not yet. Not like this. The curse, his beta said quietly. Alpha, you need to be restrained. The moon is rising, and your mate bond isn't complete. You'll shift, and without control. I know what will happen. Dante turned to Sera, desperation written across his face. You need to run.
Now.
Get as far away as you can. I can't control it. I'll kill you, Sera. I'll kill everyone. His pack was already moving, bringing chains. They wrapped them around him, securing him to a massive tree as his body began to shake with the effort of fighting the shift. Please, he begged, his voice already roughening with the change. Please run. Don't watch this. Don't let me hurt you. Sera should have run. Every instinct, every rational thought, every ounce of self-preservation screamed at her to flee. But she remembered that night at the river. The pact they'd made. Together or not at all. No. The beta grabbed her arm as Sera started forward. He'll tear you apart. The curse makes him feral. He won't recognize you. Dante was shifting now, fighting it with everything he had. His eyes were wild, more wolf than man, and fixed on Sera with an intensity that should have terrified her. "Sera." His voice was barely human. "What are you doing?" She knelt before him, just out of reach of his chained hands. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. "We made a promise. 10 days. Together or not at all. You'll die. Then we die together." She reached out, placing her hand over his heart. "Isn't that what we agreed?" The moment her hand touched his chest, everything changed. Light exploded between them, golden and bright, warm as summer sun. Dante's wolf surged forward, and Sera felt something snap into place inside her chest, like a key turning in a lock she hadn't known existed. The mate bond. It flooded her senses, his emotions, his wolf, his soul intertwining with hers. She felt his love, his fear, his desperate need to protect her. Felt the curse that had plagued him since childhood, the pain of every feral moon, the loneliness of searching for her. And his wolf, magnificent and powerful and utterly devoted, recognized her. Calmed. Submitted. The shift completed, but instead of a mindless beast, there was control. For the first time in Dante's life, his wolf recognized its mate and stayed calm under the full moon. He shifted back almost immediately, the chains falling away as his pack rushed to free him. He collapsed into Sera's arms, shaking, tears streaming down his face. "You stayed," he said, his voice broken with wonder and relief. "I stayed," Sera confirmed, crying too, holding him as tightly as he held her. "Even after everything. You idiot." She pulled back just enough to cup his face in her hands. "I love you." The man and the wolf. The alpha and the broken boy at the river. "All of you, Dante. I choose all of you." He kissed her then like he was drowning and she was air, like she was the answer to every prayer he'd ever whispered to the moon. Around them, his pack began to howl, a sound of joy and celebration and relief. Their alpha was finally free. The curse was finally broken. The return to Blood Moon Pack territory was surreal. Sera rode beside Dante, her hand in his, as they traveled with his pack. She was introduced as Luna, a title that felt both too big and somehow just right. "So do I have to do anything?" she asked Dante nervously as the packlands came into view. "Just stand there. You brought the alpha to his knees. Trust me, you're terrifying." The pack welcomed her with a mixture of awe and relief. Their alpha was smiling again, actually smiling. The curse was broken. And the human woman who'd accomplished it was clearly beloved by their leader. Her stepmother was brought before them that very evening. The woman who'd sold her, who'd killed her father, who'd made her childhood a living nightmare. Sera expected to feel rage. Instead, she felt nothing but pity for the bitter woman who'd let hate consume her. "You're banished," Dante announced, his voice carrying the weight of alpha command. "Your assets are forfeit. You'll leave Packlands and never return. If you ever threaten my mate again, the mercy ends." As guards led her away, Sera felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was finally over. Draven was dealt with next, banished for challenging his alpha and endangering pack security. Then came the work of integrating into pack life. Sera adjusted with comedic mishaps, accidentally walking in on important pack meetings, getting lost in the massive pack house, mixing up the names of seemingly dozens of wolves who all looked similar. But through it all, Dante was there. Patient, amused, utterly smitten. He used to rip throats out for disrespect, his beta muttered one morning, watching Dante make Sera breakfast. Now he's making her breakfast and using a frilly apron? "That's not a frilly apron," another pack member argued. "That's a functional apron with decorative elements." "He's whipped," a third concluded. "Completely whipped," they agreed. Sera heard the whole conversation and smiled into her tea. Epilogue. They returned to the river on their anniversary, the day they'd met, the day they'd chosen life together instead of death apart. The place looked different in daylight, peaceful and beautiful instead of dark and foreboding. Sera stood at the edge, her hand in Dante's, and marveled at how much had changed in a year. "We should jump together," Dante said suddenly. Sera's head whipped toward him. "What?" He was grinning, that crooked smile she loved so much. "Into what, though?" "That's the question." Understanding dawned, and she found herself laughing. Into forever. Into forever, he agreed. They jumped into the river together, not to end things this time, but to celebrate them. They surfaced laughing, kissing, splashing each other like children. 10 days turned into forever, Sera said, treading water beside him. Best deal I ever made, Dante replied, pulling her close. Even though I'm difficult and stubborn and can't build a cabin to save my life? Especially because of that. He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. You saved me, Sera. Not from the curse, from myself. You made me want to live again. You did the same for me. She wrapped her arms around his neck. We saved each other. They floated there in the river where it had all begun, two souls who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk into the light together. And somewhere, the moon smiled down on them, pleased with how her plans had unfolded. The broken alpha and the souled girl, the wolf and his mate, the boy and girl who'd met at the river's edge and chose life over death, love over fear, together over alone. They climbed out of the river, soaking wet and grinning like fools, and carved their initials into the tree where they'd made their blood pact. D+S, together or not at all. Ready to go home? Dante asked, offering his hand. Sera took it without hesitation. Ready. They walked away from the river hand in hand, leaving behind the ghosts of who they'd been and embracing the future they'd built together, a future neither of them had believed possible that dark night when two broken souls had made a pact that saved them both. 10 days had turned into forever. And forever was just beginning. The end. I want to say thank you for listening to this beautiful story. I'm Grace Mira, and every story you hear here is written by me, with the voices and images brought to life using AI. If you enjoyed this one, please subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps me create more lovely stories for you.